Jon Snow came back wrong. When Melisandre brought him back from the dead in Season 6, everyone celebrated. The king in the north returned. The hero we needed. But here's what the show glossed over: resurrection in Game of Thrones isn't some clean magical reset button. It's dark, it's twisted, and it costs something every single time. Jon Snow paid a price we barely got to see, and the books make it crystal clear that when you die and come back, you're never quite the same person again. Before we dive into the disturbing details of what really happened to Jon, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're breaking down the biggest Game of Thrones mysteries that the show left on the table, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let's start with how resurrection actually works in this world, because it's not pretty. The Lord of Light doesn't hand out free passes. When Thoros of Myr brought Beric Dondarrion back the first time, it seemed miraculous. But Beric wasn't brought back once. He died 6 times. And each time Thoros resurrected him, Beric lost something. He forgot pieces of his past. His memories faded. The woman he loved, the castle he grew up in, his own brother's face. All of it slowly dissolved until Beric became less of a person and more of a mission. He explicitly tells Arya in Season 3 that every time he comes back, he's less himself. The fire consumes a bit more of who he was. Now look at Lady Stoneheart. In the books, Catelyn Stark is resurrected by Beric 3 days after the Red Wedding. 3 full days of being dead, her throat cut, her body dumped in a river. When she comes back, she's not Catelyn anymore. She's a vengeful shell driven by one singular purpose: revenge against the Freys and anyone who wronged her family. She can't speak properly because of her throat wound. She's ruthless, merciless, and barely recognizes her own daughters when she encounters people who knew them. George R.R. Martin has said outright that death changes you in his world. The longer you're dead, the less of you comes back. Fire consumes, and resurrection through the Lord of Light is fire magic. Jon Snow was dead for at least a full day, probably longer based on the timeline in Season 6. His body was cold. His wounds were fatal. Multiple stab wounds to the chest and stomach, including one right through the heart with the word "traitor" attached to it. This wasn't a quick death. He bled out, surrounded by his brothers who betrayed him, including Ollie, a boy he mentored. The psychological trauma alone should have been devastating. But the show brought him back, he gasped for air, and within an episode he was mostly fine. A bit broody, sure, but that's just Jon Snow on a regular day. The books tell a different story, one the show abandoned. In A Dance with Dragons, Jon's final chapter ends with, "He never felt the fourth knife. Only the cold." That cold is important. George R.R. Martin has confirmed Jon is dead at the end of that book, but there's a massive theory that explains what happened to his consciousness during that death, and it involves ghost. Wargs in this universe have an ability that's barely explored in the show but is crucial in the books. When a warg dies, their consciousness can slip into their bonded animal. It's their second life. Varamir Sixskins, a wildling warg we meet in the books, explains this entire process. When his human body dies, his mind jumps into his wolf. It's not permanent. Eventually, the human consciousness fades and you become the animal completely, but it buys you time. Jon Snow is a warg. He's bonded with ghosts since he was a puppy. The show downplayed this connection significantly, but in the books, Jon regularly slips into Ghost's mind. He sees through his eyes, feels through his senses. They're deeply connected. So when Jon dies, where does his consciousness go? The popular theory, one that George R.R. Martin has basically confirmed through his writing patterns, is that Jon's mind went into Ghost. While his body lay cold on the ground at Castle Black, Jon Snow was running through the woods as a direwolf. This has enormous implications for his resurrection because if Jon spent any significant time as Ghost, he'd come back different. He'd come back with wolf instincts bleeding into his human mind. He'd be more aggressive, more primal, less bound by human morality and social contracts. The show gave us none of this. Jon came back and was essentially the same guy with maybe a bit more existential dread. But think about what should have happened. Beric lost memories with each resurrection and he was brought back quickly each time. Jon was dead longer, and if his soul was inside a dire wolf during that period, he should have come back fundamentally altered. More violent. Less trusting. Operating on instinct rather than honor. The books haven't reached his resurrection yet, but every single hint George R.R. Martin has dropped suggests Jon Snow will come back darker, colder, and more wolf than man. There's a specific passage in the books where Melisandre looks into her flames searching for Azor Ahai, the prophesied hero who will save the world. She asks to see Azor Ahai and all she sees is snow. Jon Snow, but also just snow, white and cold. She sees him as a man, then a wolf, then a man again. The imagery is blatant. Jon's resurrection is tied to his connection with Ghost, and that transformation will change him. Which brings us to the prophecy itself. Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised, Lightbringer, the whole mythological package. The prophecy states that Azor Ahai will be reborn amidst salt and smoke, will wake dragons from stone, and will forge the sword Lightbringer by tempering it in the heart of his lover. That last part is particularly brutal. The original Azor Ahai forged his legendary sword by driving it through his wife Nissa's heart, combining her soul with the steel to create a weapon that could defeat the darkness. Jon Snow fits multiple aspects of this prophecy. He's reborn at Castle Black, where his brothers literally smoked his body during the attempted burning, and Bowen Marsh wept salt tears while stabbing him. Salt and smoke, check. But the bigger question is whether Jon is truly Azor Ahai or if the prophecy is a red herring. Melisandre believed it was Stannis for years and was completely wrong. She switched to believing it's Jon, but is she wrong again? The show never gave us a clear answer, and honestly, that ambiguity is more interesting than a straight confirmation. What the show did confirm is that Jon's resurrection freed him from his Night's Watch vows. He says it explicitly in Season 6, "I did my duty. I was Lord Commander. I kept my vows. And I was killed for it. My watch has ended." This is huge. The Night's Watch oath is for life. You serve until death. Jon served until death. He died. So technically, his oath is fulfilled. He's no longer bound by those vows, which means he's free to marry, hold titles, have children, and pursue his Targaryen claim to the Iron Throne. None of which he wanted, ironically, but the point stands. His death released him from the one thing that kept him from political power. But there's something deeply unsettling about this loophole. The Night's Watch vow is sacred. It's a magical barrier as much as a social contract. The wall itself has protective spells woven into it, and part of that magic is tied to the men who serve. When Jon breaks free of his vows through death, does that weaken the wall's magic? The show never addresses this, but it's a disturbing possibility. We know the wall eventually falls, and while the show blames it on the Night King getting an ice dragon, the books might reveal that the wall's magic was already failing because too many brothers broke their vows or found loopholes. Let's talk about what Jon should have experienced coming back from death. Beric describes it as being in darkness, a void where there's nothing. No afterlife, no consciousness, just nothing. Jon confirms the same thing in the show. When he comes back, he tells Melisandre there was nothing. No gods, no paradise, just emptiness. That's terrifying for someone like Jon who spent his entire life trying to do the right thing. He expected something, anything, and got nothing. That kind of existential revelation should shatter a person. In the books, there are hints that resurrection doesn't just cost you memories. It costs you pieces of your humanity. Beric became more and more focused on his mission with each resurrection until he finally gave his last life to bring back Catelyn. Lady Stoneheart is even worse. She's driven entirely by revenge, unable to feel joy or compassion. She hangs Freys and Lannisters without trial, without mercy. She's become the thing she would have hated in life. So what happens to Jon? If he comes back more wolf than man, does he lose his sense of honor? Does he become more ruthless, more willing to do whatever it takes to survive? The show gave us glimpses of this. Jon executes the men who killed him, including a child. Ollie was a boy, traumatized by wildlings killing his family, and Jon hangs him anyway. That's darker than the Jon Snow we knew before. He also abandons the Night's Watch completely, something the old Jon would have agonized over. He makes hard political choices, bends the knee to Daenerys without consulting his people, and eventually kills the woman he loves to save the realm. That last one is especially important because it mirrors the Azor Ahai prophecy. Jon literally stabs the woman he loves through the heart, just like Azor Ahai did to create Lightbringer. But the show framed it as a tragic necessity rather than a transformation. We didn't get to see Jon struggle with becoming someone new. We didn't see him wrestle with having wolf instincts or losing pieces of his memory. The show played it safe, keeping Jon as the brooding hero rather than exploring the darker implications of his resurrection. Here's what the books will likely give us. Jon will come back changed. He'll be colder, more pragmatic, less bound by honor and oaths. The wolf will be stronger in him, making him more dangerous and less predictable. He'll remember his death, remember the betrayal, and it will harden him in ways the show only hinted at. His connection to Ghost will be deeper, and he might even struggle with separating his human thoughts from his wolf instincts. George R.R. Martin has said that death is not a minor thing in his world, and characters who come back aren't the same. Jon Snow will not be the same. There's also the question of what Melisandre actually did when she brought him back. She admits she didn't think it would work. She performed a ritual, said some words, cleaned his wounds, and cut his hair. Then she gave up and went to sleep. Jon came back hours later without her even in the room. So did Melisandre actually resurrect him, or did something else bring him back? The Lord of Light, sure, but why Jon? Why bring back this one man when so many others die without resurrection? What purpose does Jon serve in the Lord of Light's plan? The answer might be simpler than we think. Jon is a Targaryen and a Stark. He's ice and fire, the song itself. His existence bridges the two great magical bloodlines of Westeros. He's the only person who can unite the living against the dead because he belongs to both worlds. The North respects him as Ned Stark's son, and the Targaryens need him as Rhaegar's heir. His resurrection isn't about him personally. It's about what he represents and what he can accomplish. But that doesn't change the fact that resurrection has a cost. Melisandre brought him back, and even she doesn't fully understand what she did or what it took. There are hints throughout the series that the Lord of Light's magic requires sacrifice. Melisandre burns people alive to fuel her spells. She burns Shireen Baratheon, a child, to help Stannis, and it fails because Stannis wasn't Azor Ahai. But when she resurrects Jon, what was sacrificed? His humanity? His memories? Parts of his soul that we'll never see again? The show ends with Jon going back beyond the wall with the free folk. It's framed as a bittersweet ending, Jon finding peace away from politics and power. But think about what that really means. He's choosing to live in exile, away from civilization, with wildlings and dire wolves. He's choosing the wolf over the man. Maybe that's not Jon finding peace. Maybe that's Jon accepting what he became after his resurrection. A man too much of a wolf to fit in the world of men anymore. So what's the dark truth Melisandre didn't tell him? That resurrection isn't a miracle, it's a curse. That coming back means losing pieces of yourself you'll never get back. That the fire consumes, and you're never whole again. Jon Snow came back wrong, and the show just didn't have the guts to fully explore what that meant. He should have been darker, colder, more ruthless, more wolf. Instead, we got a slightly more brooding version of the same hero. If you made it this far, drop a comment telling me what you think Jon lost when he died. Did his time as Ghost change him more than the show let on? Should the show have gone darker with his character? And if you want more deep dives into the secrets Game of Thrones left behind, subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're just getting started with the hidden truths of Westeros. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.